Good morning, grade 10s. This is a short review after the break. So this is something we talked about before we went on a break. So hopefully watching this video is going to help you recall a lot of things. First, we talked about a right triangle. When we are given a right triangle with theta, we call the side that is opposite of that angle, right? Opposite of that angle called opposite side. The side that is the longest in a right triangle, which is opposite of 90 degrees, is called hypotenuse. Then the side that is remaining is called adjacent. Adjacent meaning next to, so it's next to that angle. So given these three sides, we can come up with 6 trig ratios. Sine of an angle is equal to opposite over hypotenuse. We call that as SO. Sine equals to opposite over hypotenuse. Cosine of an angle is equal to adjacent over hypotenuse, which we said ca. Tangent of theta is equal to opposite over adjacent, which we can write it as TOA. So SOHCAHTOA stands for the 3 trig ratios. Then we talked about reciprocals. What is a reciprocal? Yes, it means opposite, flip of a fraction. So when you flip the fraction, such as the sine, into hypotenuse over opposite, right, which is the flip of a sine, that is called cosecant. If you flipped cosine, that's called secant. If you flip tangent, that's called cotangent. So those are the 6 trig ratios. Then we talked about some trig identity. The first one we talked about was if you divide sine by cosine, that's equal to tangent. Sine squared of theta, this means sine of theta times sine of theta, so sine theta squared, plus cosine theta times another cosine of theta. Those two, when you add, it's always equal to 1. Then we did a whole worksheet on the complement of an angle. Sine of a theta is equal to cosine of 90 minus theta. Cosine of theta equaling sine of 90 minus theta. And lastly, tangent of theta is equal to cotangent 90 minus theta. For these 3 properties, if you are confused, look at the worksheet we did together. Again, the note is all available on Google Classroom. Next thing we looked at was special triangles. We have 2 special triangles. First one is 30, 60, and 90, which we'll look at first. Then we'll look at 45, 45, and 90. So in the 30, 60, and 90 triangle, opposite of 30 degrees always has a ratio of 1. Opposite of 60 has always a ratio of root 3, and opposite of 90, 2. So in next special triangle, opposite of 45 is always 1. Doesn't matter which one because both of them are 45. 45 angles, so it's an isosceles triangle. And then using a Pythagorean theorem, you can find out that the hypotenuse has a ratio of root 2. So using these ratios, you're going to do some problems later on. So 30, 60, and 90 has a ratio of 1, root 3, and 2. 45, 45, and 90 has a ratio of 1, 1, and root 2. Alright. Next, we talked about reference angle. What is a reference angle? It's an acute angle, which means it's less than 90 degrees. And it is formed by x-axis and a terminal side. So in this problem, we're given that the theta is equal to 120 degrees. We always start on the positive x-axis, and then we go into a counterclockwise. if the theta is positive. So 120 degree lies on the second quadrant. So all of that in orange is 120 degrees. Unfortunately, this 120 degree is not a reference angle because it is an obtuse angle. So we need to find an acute angle that is formed by the terminal side and the x-axis. So those two, that's 60 degrees. So reference angle of 120 degree is 60 degrees. One thing to keep in mind is when you have a theta that is positive, when angle is positive, then it goes in counterclockwise, anti-clockwise. When theta is negative angles, then angle goes in clockwise rotation. Then we talked about all students take calculus. What does that mean? Every single thing on the first quadrant is positive. Only sine on the second quadrant is positive. Tangent, only tangent is positive on the third quadrant. On the fourth quadrant, only cosine is positive. The last thing we looked at was the values of the trig. This one requires you to use a calculator and make sure your mode is always in degrees, never in radians. So we want to evaluate the following and make sure your answers are always in 3 significant figures. Cosine of 30, you literally type in cosine of 30 on your calculator and then round your answers to 3 sig fig. So 0.866. So try it on your calculator and see if you get the same answer as I do. Tangent of 21 should give you an answer of 0.384. Pause your video and then try. Secant of 70. This is a tricky one because on your calculator, you're only given sine, cosine, and tangent. So you gotta remember that secant is a reciprocal of cosine. Reciprocal means, right, it's the flip of a fraction. So you have 1 over cosine of 70 equals to 2.92. So whenever you're given secant, cosecant, cotangent, make sure to use 1 over. Next question is finding the angle. So in the previous problem, we're given the angle and we're evaluating the value. Here, it's the opposite. We're given the value and we're evaluating the angle. In order to do that, you need to use inverse sine, which you can find it also on your calculator. Inverse sine sometimes is referred to as an arc sine. So in order to do that, you type in sine of an inverse of a value 0.87 and then that returns the value of 60.5. If you have any questions, I am happy to go over them when I see you guys on Monday. For the remaining of the period, you're going to work on this worksheet that I have created for you based on the reviews that we did. You might need to refer to some of the notes that we took before the break. But again, any questions, I'm happy to go over on Monday. Hope you guys have a fantastic first online learning day and see you soon. Bye.